everybody, Mark Coxon back here with another episode of the Co.Lore podcast where we talk about storytelling through space and technology. And we also talk about articulation and proper speaking techniques. But today I have a guest, a very special guest, and one I'm excited to have with me, somebody I've tried to get together with in person on another podcast, but just didn't work out. So during this quarantine time, we're going to do this via Zoom on Co.Lore. But it's Meg Sciarini Smith, and I'm not going to say where she works because I'll let her tell her story the way she wants to, and if she wants to disclose certain things, she can. But Meg, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Mark. Super happy to be talking to you finally.
I know we were supposed to meet up at E4 to do an in-person podcast that would have included beverages. So if people pay attention to rAVe, there are some other podcasts that I do that include other things. But anyways, I'm glad that you were able to do this with me. For people who don't know you, it's always fun to hear how people got into AV and what their specific background was and what they do. Where did you come from? And then kind of without saying, anything you can't say, what's kind of your role today as far as, your function and what you do?
Yeah, the short and dirty version is I grew up in Toledo, Ohio, went to University of Toledo, was experimenting a lot with video and immersive environments. Which back in the day, I think they were calling like installation art. But I was using video with crappy little projectors, and my MacBook Pro as playback, and really doing kind of some skunkworks media within our theater department. So I was doing video design for some of our theatrical productions. During college, I got to go to a conference from Cirque du Soleil.
Okay.
Met a few people there. And then later that year I graduated, and lo and behold, on their website was a position for a projection technician for Vegas. Applied online, didn't really know anybody, but I had, in my crazy little university life, I had experimented with a lot of programs that they were looking for someone who had experience with. So I was, a combination of really lucky and, with the right skills and that they were seeking. And that is how I wound up with Cirque du Soleil out in Vegas. Did 4 years with them, jumped a couple shows, and then finally got out on tour. Left tour due to an injury, and then started working freelance for a couple of other artists, putting on touring shows, doing system design for interactive video in live production. Found my way to manufacturing, which is where I met you.
Yep.
And then now I'm doing systems engineering for audiovisual, and sort of doing some interesting stuff in the spaces of what does an environment need to be. So mostly that. And then on the side, I still do video design when I can.
Wow. So you're not busy.
No, I mean, yeah, I only, work 16-hour days willingly, all the time.
Wow. That's amazing. Well, the thing that I think that's very interesting is that your skill set, which is a very kind of experiential show, live event centered skill set, seems to be something that over the course of the last few years is probably becoming more sought after as we talk about how we're turning public spaces into spaces that people want to go to when they don't have to, right? Like even before this period that we're in, if anybody's watching later from the future, this was a period when we had to stay in our houses for a month and a half in 2020. But if anybody's, even before that, there was this trend that, a lot of people like to, shop online or have online experiences, and the convenience factor for a lot of things happened, but people still crave interaction with other people and interaction with space. And it seems like your skill set, especially in retail environments and hospitality and things, may be something that is being more and more asked about. Do you see that when you're talking to your clients?
Yeah, I would say that generally a skill set, when you can start looking at space differently, or at least come at it as from just a slightly different perspective, it brings in a lot of those elements. So What's really cool is when you're able to I didn't plan this. It's really cool that life worked out this way for me. But what's really cool is taking a lot of the experiences that I had as a technician and an end user, and I have brought those with me all the way, as well as always loving being an audience member.
Hmm.
So if I'm designing or whatever I'm trying, whatever problem I'm trying to solve, I think it's really uh, been in my best interest to approach problems thinking like, if I was standing someplace right now, like what would wow me, what would annoy me, like what wouldn't I like, what I do and do not like. And finding a lot of the do not likes is just as important as finding the likes out of something. So I think having a very broad and unusual experience has created some really good skill sets that I've relied on when trying to always approach things in maybe a less than formulative or proper way, or definitely I think of standards as guidelines.
Yeah. Yeah, I think too many times as technology people, we start to think about how we're going to do something before we really figure out what we're trying to do. Um,
Mhm.
and that becomes, a big question. I smile a little bit when you talk about always being an audience member, because I remember one of the first things I think I ever wrote for Commercial Integrator back when I used to write for them was, if you want to design better house worship systems, think like a parishioner, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're sitting in church, you don't want to see the back of a Sony projector. You're there to see the cross or the backdrop or to be able to. So that perspective to take yourself out and say, right now, I'm not an AV designer. I am an audience member sitting in this space. So how do you look at space and start to determine what the purpose of the space is, or what kind of outcome you want to get out of technology in a space when you're talking to clients or you're looking at spaces? What's kind of that iterative process of like, what are we really trying to do here?
Yeah, so I mean, to me, the vision has to be clear, right? And as a technologist, I'm not always going to be, I'm usually never the director, right? Or I'm never that central vision focus. Now, that's not to say I don't participate in the vision or, engage in the conversation to help create the vision. But I think collectively across the teams involved when it comes to a space, you have got to have this conversation, and then a clear path forward of, okay, the vision is A. My favorite example of this is black box theaters, right? When you're designing a black box theater, you already know what color the walls are going to be. You've already got so many of the other elements there, but the purpose of a black box theater is that you can go in and perform any kind of performance space. It can be whatever you want, and you're literally just going to make something out of the bare minimum. And that's something that I really always try to take to heart, that the purpose of it is the message and the production, or the central reason as to why the space exists anyways. So if we're talking like a public space, for example, movie theater lobbies, right? That was a hot, lobby experiences are still, like they were a big hot topic for a while. We thought they were going to be like the new thing. And it's really, to me, that's an opportunity to say, okay, we're going into a lobby, but we know that the lobby has to function as an actual lobby. So take tickets, concessions, inform people of where their theater is, what time their movie's at. But now you're seeing these really cool open spaces for lobbies. You're seeing, bars and restaurants try to be part of that. And you're trying to get people to come in to do dinner and a movie and make it cool again, right? To have that level of experience. Then when AV came into the space, they were like, well, we want to make it immersive. So your movie theater posters are going to react to the audience coming in. And I think there was a really, I think there was either, I can't remember where I saw it, but I mean, one of the coolest examples of that, I think they did it with one of the last Harry Potter movies, when like Deathly Hallows came out. They did a bunch of interactive poster designs, like, you know, you were reading a paper and all the wizards were actually moving similar to how it was in the story. And so you have to take the function and the moments, like these little digital moments, and figure out what's appropriate, where does it fit. Technology is never supposed to be the star of the show. And if people are noticing the technology, like, oh my God, that projector, it was just so bright and cool. It's like, that's awesome for AV and we're all going to nerd out on it. But as an audience member, you want the magic, you want it hidden, you want it to be able to suspend your disbelief that you're just paid, you know, $50 for popcorn and a ticket to something.
Yeah.
And you want to be transported into another world. But that's sort of how you have to break it apart in tiny segments versus function versus the you know, some of the wow moments or these digital, you know, puns, as you would, like just these cool little things that make it that special.
Yeah, I remember reading a book by Nancy Duarte called Resonate. I don't know if you've ever read that book, but it's one of my
No,
favorite ones,
no.
so I probably mention it all the time. But it's about resonating with an audience, and I think she dissected everything from the Martin Luther King speech to the Gettysburg Address to the iPhone launch for the original iPhone, and broke down all of these speeches and what we consider great communication, and found this backbone of them. And they said, you know, in any of them, they create a lot of this contrast that you're talking about with these little moments, they call them star moments, something you'll always remember, um, and also invitation to awe, right? Some moment where you ask the audience to just sit there and be awed by what's happening. And
Yes.
that's amazing. You kind of brought that through in what you were talking about. You did mention that you were, as a technologist, you're typically not asked to be the director of these type of spaces. And I saw you give a talk for the Learn from Home Summit where you were talking a little bit about building a team for interactive experiences or for experiential design. And you know, when you're talking about vision, there's a director that owns this vision. So, you know, if we're out there as AV people or as architects or as storytellers or designers or whoever's watching this, and we're talking to a client, we're trying to help them connect their audience to this message that they've determined they want to communicate. Who usually takes the lead on that in your experience, as far as, you know, owning this vision of the story and then making sure they have the right people in place to execute?
Yeah. So as a, you know, I think in most cases during my talk, we talked about like the the flow of the way a theatrical production brings something, literally a creation of a show, into existence, and how they manage to do that. Number one is just one of the coolest experiences to ever be a part of. But I also found that that methodology is so applicable no matter what industry you're in. So something cool is like me and my dad talk about this now, where I'm like, well, on my team, I want these things and I need this crew member to do this, right? And I still have that terminology. But my dad's like, yeah, on my team, I have my crew and here's what, you know, they're all specialists. Then they bring their speciality together and then we collaborate, right? So it's very, to me, the theatrical workflow is super intuitive for a
Hmm.
lot of people, even if they don't consider themselves creatives. So when it comes to director, I think a lot of people hear director and they're like, yeah, I want to be that person. I want to drive the vision. I want to do that. That's great. Take ownership. But also realize that now that's your vision and you are responsible for the drive of it, right? That's a big responsibility.
Hmm.
Like, you know, so when you talk to a client, it's like, okay, we're designing this room. What do you want the main function and the main purpose for this to be? So if we're talking conference rooms, right, now you're talking about like a unified communication and collaboration space. But we've all seen conference rooms that have been maybe not so well executed, right? And then the technology gets blamed versus, okay, did we go in with a vision, or did we just know this was going to be a conference room? Right. And then you stick a bunch of crap in there where the functionality is there, but it's not intuitive. It's not great. People come out of there going like, well, we couldn't get, whatever to work. So I put my phone on speaker and set it in the middle of the table because that was better. Right. So as a director and who that person is, in my experience, I've seen, coming from live events, usually it is the director or
Hmm.
the production designer who is building out that this needs to happen this way. Um, Good production designers and good directors will bring their team in to influence those decisions. Like they have the high level framework and they have the timing down and they know what they want to see. They don't know the how. I would say that they generally don't care how it gets done. They want it done, right?
Hmm.
So you need somebody who's not going to be necessarily into the nitty gritty details of lighting cues or, in conference rooms, they're just like, look, I don't care. The camera needs to be here so we can be like this and it'll feel like we're together, right?
Yeah.
So it's in terms of that, I really don't, I think that's one of the problems is there's not usually someone willing to step up as a director.
Wow.
Um, and like as technologists, I think we often find that where, we maybe have some creatives we're working with or some folks that we're, some clients that they don't even know how to ask for what they want because they can't articulate that want. So I find it much easier to ask them more open-ended questions about like, okay, when you're having a meeting here or when we're doing this, what's the feeling? What does the audience or what is your end user, what do you want for them, right? That's trying to take it much more basic. Go for the basic. What do you really want? And then the technology, I mean, good God, there's so many ways to do one simple thing. It really comes down to, the best way forward. And then that's where the technologist takes off of. But really identifying that director is much more of a human conversation about what do you really want for this space and what do you want to be able to achieve in this space.
Yeah, I identify with that a lot because I've had some of that same thing. And sometimes you have to, I think, and you tell me, but I've found many times you have to coach, you coach the client into taking that role in a way. I love your analogy about, the director and the show and the crew and it being from that live performance space, because I think most people in their heads, they think they understand, how a movie or how a show is put together and what those roles are, right? It's just to some rudimentary level. So if you explain to the job to them that in that same way, hey, just much like, a movie where we're trying to communicate a vision and a message to an audience, this project really takes a lot of that same structure, and we really need somebody who owns this vision through and makes these executive decisions and decides what we're trying to say and how we're trying to say it, and then we'll help you
Yep.
get there. um,
Right.
I love that idea. I had a client who was a educator once who said, I need AV for my space. And I said, well, what are you trying to do? And he's like, well, we want to have our students remember going on our admissions tour. And I said, okay, well, we should go take an admissions tour. Like, let's go see what an admissions
Yeah.
tour looks like. And he's like, I've been here 7 years. I've never taken an admissions tour before, so like, so we didn't even know what we were working with, at that
Right.
moment. So sometimes it's just, maybe even helping them take a step backwards, right? They're rearing to go, but they haven't really done the prep,
No,
right?
but I think that's an excellent way. Like, I mean, it resonates with me how you said that, like, where it's like, oh, you're okay, here's what you're trying to do. Well, it sounds like we need to go live that. Like, let's go experience it ourselves. Then we're going to have an idea of what we actually need to get across. But it's really that perfect mix of, empowering the client is much more. I think that also does so much more for the building of the relationship with the client. And it
Hmm.
really makes them feel like they're in ownership of it, even though we're a team and we're all helping. And just like you said, like, okay, what do you want? We'll help you get there, right? I think that's super awesome way to approach that situation.
So you've got to go a lot of places in your life. You were on a crew that did traveling shows, and you've been, I think, all over the world at this point, right? With Cirque and the company that we worked for, and now with your current company, I'm sure you're all over the place. Um, Given all that, have you ever been to a space where the space was kind of begging to tell a story or had this story in the background, and you just saw a huge missed opportunity for them to do something to communicate it?
Yes. Um, I mean, I think it's so funny too because my when I go with my husband to some places, he's been a little bit more inundated into the AV world than I think a welder normally would have imagined himself
Yeah.
being. Um, and so he and I now get into funny little discussions about, some of these spaces and what they could be.
Hmm.
Um, and so one of my favorite ones was when we were looking at reception areas to have our wedding reception at. There was this beautiful place we were in Georgia, and the historical building itself, just this awesome bricklayer, like some of the most cool organic structure of like the ironwork and the internal like gas lighting lamps and stuff. And when they toured us, like the brochure looked great, like the still images gorgeous, of course they're going to put the best out there. When you went and actually toured the space, um, it was like such a like, oh, that's not how I would demo this space. I would
Hmm.
demo this differently, and I think it was something where it's like, it doesn't need to be a humongous projection mapped, amazing, like, lighting everywhere, but small, simple technological advancements could have gotten my business, right? Just by using a little bit, like, number one, why they put fluorescence in a historical building? Why? Why would you do that? It turns it green.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that is not going to be good for photos. Like, um,
You
so I
didn't want
think, yeah,
the you didn't want the Joe versus the volcano package for.
no, we definitely wanted at least something slightly classy, little
Yeah.
classy, not like full classy because it's me.
Well,
Um,
no, that's
yeah,
cool. I like that a lot. That's those historic places are always the ones that I get. You know, I'm a geek for construction methods and things like that. So like the Gamble House in Pasadena for me is just a place to go geek out, just to look at. And there's no technology there from a AV standpoint, but the technology from wood joinery and all the kind of stuff that is in that house and the furniture and the arts and crafts movement in general, becomes something very cool to look at. And those are places where I think there could be a lot of history woven into space.
yeah. One of the most, as opposed to, a place that needed a lot of improvement, one of my first, actually, I would say the first space that got me thinking maybe that space in general was really cool, is in the Toledo Art Museum. They have a space called the Cloister,
Okay.
and it's all of these stone archways and segments taken from monasteries. So this beautiful stonework that's been preserved and somehow transported to Toledo, Ohio. Um, and and they've got a couple more historical, it's all historical, but it's just this singular room and that's its purpose. But the most beautiful thing that they did to upgrade that space was they put in like a dome cloud lighting system. And with that, they created this beautiful, almost white light that was not going to impact any of the artwork because that's living artwork essentially.
I lost you. Uh-oh.
That blues. So it's like you're on this evening at a monastery, and it was magical. And all they did was change the lighting. I mean, but that's still, it's so transformative. It's elegant. It really was an effective experience, and I think it still is. I don't think they've. I think that's still happening in Toledo.
That's awesome. That gives me a reason to go to Toledo. I've never been there.
It is, if there is one reason you go to Toledo, other than for the Toledo Walleye hockey team, which is excellent, the Toledo Art Museum is amazing. I think it's been rated as like one of the top 10 in the world, and it's free. So
Wow.
you can walk in and go see amazing things. And it's totally free. Thank you, Libby family.
Well, that's awesome. Well, hey, thank you so much for joining me. I'm glad that you got to come in. Well, I try to keep this short so people don't get bored of me, talking at them. But it's been very nice to hang out with you. I love your perspective on things, and I think if people really want to connect the dots between experience in space, make sure they go see Meg on Twitter, which is Meg X Machina. If you look for her on Twitter, and you'll get some great insights and things. And then look for her teaching too, because she's out there doing some work for Aviation. I don't know if she's going to do rAVe Launch. I know they're doing one. I don't know if you're going to do Infocom Connect. Look at this. Look at all these opportunities for you to get out there and talk. Um, but thanks for joining us on this episode of Co.Lore.
People want to
And
listen.
exactly. And we'll see you guys next time. Thanks.